Record. All right. The thing that I want to review is symbolism. So if I were to say the word summer, what immediately pops into your head? Like what pictures are you immediately getting in your head? Lily.
The sun.
The sun. Kaylee.
Like pools.
Pools.
Hot weather.
Okay. DJ.
Warm weather.
Warm weather. Zeke.
Friends.
Hanging with friends.
Running outside on the hot sidewalk.
Running outside on the hot sidewalk. Fiona.
I kind of like picture like the beach or a lake or something like with water.
Okay, beach, lake, somewhere with water. Sam.
Hitting home runs.
Hitting home runs.
Yeah,
Of course. Sean.
When the earth faces the sun.
He thinks of science and that the earth is tilted towards the sun.
That's smart.
I do think that is the first thing that comes to my mind too when you guys say
Do the science.
I'm the science nerd and I don't even think that, guys. Yeah, I like Fiona and Kaylee. I went to like pool, water, fun, because that's really the only time of year you get to do that. 4th of July. Okay, Maggie.
It reminds me of the Frozen movie when Olaf is thinking about summer.
All right, when Olaf sings in summer. Okay, we didn't need that. All right, now, so summer, we could say that summer is symbolic of warmth, good times, being outside, water fun, cooking out, right? We say summer is symbolic of those things. What if I showed you this symbol? Hang on.
Wait, I got one for summer. It's in Chinese. This is a good one. Okay, everybody.
Hang on.
Yeah. Summer school. The day school's out. Okay, so
All right, so when you see this symbol, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? No. Raise your hand. Riley. McDonald's. Tell me more specifically.
I see an M.
Okay, Riley sees an M. That's not symbolic. Thank you. Kaylee.
A burger.
Burger. Sophie.
French fries.
French fries. Jason.
Food.
Food in general. All of it. Sean.
Better than the schools?
Better than the school.
Wow. True.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's McDonald's. Virtual friend. Who raised their hand? Ray Josie.
Obviously.
It makes me think of mine.
Okay.
Of what?
Yeah,
because
they have Kendall.
Chicken nuggets.
Chicken nuggets. That's what I was thinking of. Chicken nuggets with sweet and sour sauce. Their French fries are good too. Zeke.
So it makes me think of my grandma because I used to go there like every weekend there for a long time and play with my friends.
Okay, Zeke said it actually makes him think of his grandma because he used to get to go there with her all the time and they would play on the play area or whatever. DJ.
I think of like the song ba 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 ba.
Ba 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 ba. I'm loving it. All right.
Like a
Fiona.
Spicy chicken. It kind of reminds me whenever like that was McDonald's. It kind of reminds me of like the drive-through and going through the drive-through after gymnastics.
Okay, for Fiona, it reminds her of after gymnastics, they drive through the drive-through and get a snackety snack. There was quite a while when after Landon's swim lessons, every time because his swim lessons were at the Y, so it's right there by McDonald's. We would drive through McDonald's after his swim lessons and get him a snack because after you swim, you're super hungry always. Yeah. Big Mac. That's what I want.
That's all you get.
No, chicken nuggets. The McFish. Filet-O-Fish.
I get fried McChicken.
Just a regular cheeseburger, fries.
Quarter pounder. I love a Chinese letter, and I want to see what people think.
Anyway, all right. So McDonald's, symbolic to each of us in very similar ways because we all have different menu items that we think of immediately. We're like, yum. But for some of us, it has a little bit more to it. Fiona's thinking about going there after gymnastics. Zeke's thinking about his grandma. So for some of us, it actually has a little bit deeper symbolism than others. Grayson.
Whoever Chinese.
Well, it reminds me of what Maggie's meme that she had. Whenever
The
McDonald's in Africa with a fat giraffe.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Miss Fab.
I also think of there's a drawer in Landon's room that is full of all the cheap, stupid Happy Meal toys.
Oh yeah, I have one.
Yeah.
That you play with like that day and then you never touch them again. But
Yeah,
then
I
like
love those.
if I tried to throw them away, he would yell at me.
Like, no, I never play with those. Keep them.
I know.
But something are going to become.
Miss Fab, can you click on the original?
Shh.
Can you click on the original one? Let's see what's the original. Look up. Like one of the
Oh,
options.
the original was super cool. They had like
Original McDonald's. Do you guys see
They
this?
had the seats and they were hot dog buns and like.
It wasn't a double arch back then. It was a
Miss Fab.
single arch originally.
They were so lucky
Okay.
back then because the
Now.
tables were hamburgers.
I want you to look for symbolism when we are reading today. Okay? Something in the chapter that is one thing
I already
that's
have one.
obvious. We haven't started the chapter
I
yet.
know, but I have one from the last chapter.
Okay, go ahead.
The hatchet symbolizes Reuben, right? Isn't that the one that stabbed himself or whatever? It represents his death.
All right, the hatchet, the axe represented death. Agree. Because even before it accidentally killed Reuben, what was he using the axe for?
Kill the dogs.
To
Kill
kill.
the tree.
No, he wasn't
Yeah,
killing a
chop down
dog
the
with
big
it.
He was gonna
Kill
kill.
the dog.
He was gonna go whack the dogs.
Reuben was, but it wasn't Reuben's axe. Whose axe was it?
Billy.
It was Billy's axe.
He
Reuben
used
took
to
it from
kill
him.
those ones he caught him, basically.
So Billy used it for a couple of things.
No, he used the club to kill the kids. He killed the trees with it.
Killed the tree. Okay. So axe symbolized death. Good. Now, today, Josie, yes, ma'am.
He killed all of the raccoons with it.
Zeke says he thinks he was whacking him with a club to kill the raccoons. I was thinking he was killing the coons with the axe
The
too.
tree falling. Remember, Billy used it to whack.
Right, he killed the big tree with it. We know that. Okay,
And-
guys.
And the coonskins represent the store, because that's mainly what.
No, I'm not sure. I'm going to say the coonskin represents the store.
It represents his success in hunting.
It represents his success. Okay. All right. Pause. We're going to read. All right. Chapter 14. Hang on. This mask down here is driving me nuts. I'd rather actually wear it. Okay. Chapter 14. This is after he had laid the flowers on the grave. He felt better. He headed home and he told the dogs they would go hunting after supper. Okay. A few days later, on his way back from the mill, one of the Hatfield boys stopped at our place. He told me my grandfather wanted to see me. It was unusual for Grandpa to send for me, and it had me worried. I figured that he wanted to talk to me about the death of Reuben Pritchard. I always enjoyed talking to my grandpa, but I didn't want to talk about Reuben's death. Every time I thought of him, I lived the horrible tragedy all over again. After a practically sleepless night, the next morning I started for the store. I was walking along deep in thought when little Ann zipped by me. She was as happy as a young gray squirrel. She wiggled and twisted, and once she barked at me. I looked behind me. There was old Dan trotting along. He stopped when I turned around. Little Ann came up to me. I scolded them and tried to explain that I wasn't going hunting. I was just going to the store to see what Grandpa wanted. They couldn't or didn't want to understand. I picked up a small stick and slapped my leg with it. In a deep voice, I said, "Now you go on home, or I'm going to wear you out." This hurt their feelings. With their tails between their legs and trotting side by side, they started back. Every little way they would stop and look back at me. It was too much. I couldn't stand it. I began to feel bad all over. "Well, all right," I said, "come on, you can go. But Dan, if there are any dogs around the store and you get in a fight, I won't take you hunting for a whole year." And I mean that, although I knew I didn't. They came running, tickled to death. Little Ann took one of her silly spells. She started nipping at the long red tail of old Dan. Not getting any reaction from him, she jumped over him. She barked at him. He wouldn't even look at her. She ran around in front of him and laid down in the trail, acting like a cat ready to spring. Stiff-legged, he walked up close to her, stopped, and showed his teeth. I laughed out loud. I knew he wouldn't bite her any more than he'd bite me. He was just acting tough because he was a boy dog. After several attempts to get him to play, little Ann gave up. Together they started sniffing around in the underbrush. As I walked up in the front of the store, Grandpa hollered at me from the barn. I went over to him. Right away, he wanted to know all about Reuben's accident. He listened while I told the story over again. After I had my say, Grandpa stood looking down at the ground. There was a deep frown on his face and a hurt look in his eyes. His quietness made me feel uneasy. He finally raised his head and looked at me. What I could see in his friendly old face tore at my heart. It seemed that there were more wrinkles than I had ever seen before. His uncombed iron gray hair looked almost white. I noticed that his wrinkled old hand trembled as he rubbed the wire-stiff stubble on his chin. Pause. What do you think is wrong with Grandpa?
He's sad.
Why is he sad?
I think he's getting a little more older.
He's getting a little older? Yeah, maybe. Why would he be sad, Sean?
Because he was like, he told them that if he knew beyond, then like, they'll get hurt.
Okay, he had warned them that they might get hurt.
Oh,
Be more specific, Jason.
So he told them that he was going to send them to prison if they hurt Billy. But actually, somebody of Billy's actually ended up hurting one of them.
Oh, before that even. You're not wrong, Jason. He had threatened them, and it turns out they were the ones that ultimately paid the price.
Oh, wait.
But,
I know.
Josie,
I was thinking because he was the one who made the bet. Like, he was the one who agreed to the bet. And if he didn't do that, then none of it would have ever happened.
right there. And I think that's what Zeke was going to say, and he's giving me dirty looks, and I think Kane was also on that track too. Yeah, Billy wasn't going to make the bet at all. He was just going to deal with the Pritchards running their mouth, and he was going to leave the store. Grandpa got mad at the Pritchards for running their mouth, and he's the one that made the bet for Billy. So ultimately, this all is on Grandpa that this all happened.
No, he's
Okay.
just feeling bad.
He's feeling bad for himself. In a low voice that quivered as he talked. What does quivered mean?
I don't know. Like,
Zekel.
like when if your lips like quiver, like you're like
Really
scared, you're like scared or excited, and like it's like shaking and unstable.
Like shaking, unstable, kind of trembling a little bit. In a low voice that quivered as he talked, so his voice is kind of shaky. He said, Billy, I'm sorry about all this. You know, like when you can tell somebody's about to cry and their voice is kind of shaky like that. That's what quivered is. Billy, I'm sorry about all this. Truly sorry. I can't help but feel that in a way it was my fault. No, Grandpa, I said, it wasn't your fault. It wasn't anyone's fault. It just happened and no one could help it. I know, he said, but if I hadn't called Reuben's bet, nothing would have happened. I guess when a man gets old, he doesn't think straight. I shouldn't have let those boys get under my skin. Grandpa, I said, Reuben and Rainey could get under anybody's skin. You couldn't help that. Why, they get under everyone's skin that gets close to them. Yes, I know, he said, but still I acted like a fool, Billy. I had no idea things were going to turn out like they did, or I wouldn't have called that bet. Wanting to change the conversation, I said, Grandpa, we won that bet fair and square, but they took my money anyway. I saw the fire come back to his eyes. This made me feel better. He was more like the Grandpa I loved. That's all right, he said. We'll just forget the whole thing. Yeah, technically, Reuben had the $2 when he died. Do you think Billy should have gotten it back?
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't.
Number one, nobody's pulling $2 off a dead kid, I don't think.
What? Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Grave robber.
Okay, if my axe caused another person to die, I don't think I'd be worried about
Like $2.
$2. Even if, now remember that $2 is worth 60 nowadays. But I still, if I accidentally caused another human to die, I don't really think I'd be worried about $60.
Yeah, like after he dies, you're like, buddy.
Yeah, that would be incredibly
Funny.
selfish.
Funny.
Not funny. It would be rude and heartless, really. Inconsiderate.
Well, 67 and more bucks.
It's not worth someone's
Was
life.
Robbed.
Not worth someone's life.
Was robbed.
Not worth someone's life. Sit
To
down.
me,
Sit down.
67.
It would have been the wrong thing to do. Or to even ask Rainey for the $2 back later. Like, that was not the right thing to do. So it's good that Billy and his grandpa aren't worried about the $2, right?
No,
Okay.
Grandpa got mad though. He said the fighter.
He stepped over and laid his hand on my shoulder. In a solemn voice, he said, "We won't talk about this again. Now, I want you to forget it ever happened because it wasn't your fault. Oh, I know it's hard for a boy to ever completely forget something like that. All through your life, you'll think of it now and then, but try not to let it bother you. And don't ever feel guilty about it. It's not good for a young boy to feel that way." I nodded my head, thinking if people would just stop questioning me about Reuben's death, maybe I could forget. Grandpa said, "Well, the accident wasn't the only thing I wanted to talk to you about. I've got something else. Something I think will help us both forget a lot of things." The twinkle in Grandpa's eyes reminded me of what my father had said. "Seems like that old man can cook up more deals than anyone in the country."
Maybe it's a gun.
I didn't care how many deals Grandpa cooked up. He was still the best grandpa in the whole wide world. "What have you got?" I asked. "Come over to the store," he said, "and I'll show you." On our way over, I heard him mutter, "I hope this doesn't turn out like the ghost coon hunt." On entering the store, Grandpa walked to the post office department and came back with a newspaper in his hand. He spread it out on the counter. Pointing with his finger, he said in a loud voice, "Look there." I looked. In large black letters, it read, "Championship Coon Hunt to be held." My eyes popped open. Again, I read the words. Grandpa was chuckling. I said, "Boy, if that isn't something, a championship coon hunt?" Wide-eyed, I asked, "Where are they having this hunt, and what does it have to do with us?" Grandpa was getting excited. Off came his glasses, and out came the old red handkerchief. He blew his breath on the lens and polished them, snorted a time or two, reared back, and almost shouted, "Do with us? Why does everything to do with us? All my life I've wanted to go to one of these big coon hunts. Why, I've even dreamed about it. And now the opportunity has come. Yes, sir, now I can go." He paused. "That is, if it's all right with you." I was dumbfounded. I said, "All right with me? Why, Grandpa, you know it's all right with me, but what have I got to do with it?" What does Billy have to do with Grandpa going
He's
to
the
a
one that's getting to hunt the coons.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
the dirt.
Sean said, "Durr, you're the one going to hunt the coons in the championship, Billy." Yeah, I don't know how Billy isn't like putting this together right now. But okay.
It's Eddie's.
Grandpa was so excited, I thought he was going to burst a blood vessel. Talking excitedly, he said, "I've got it all fixed, Billy. We can enter Old Dan and Little Ann in the championship hunt." I was so surprised at what Grandpa had said, I couldn't utter a word. At first, I was scared, and then a wonderful feeling came over me. I felt the excitement of the big hunt as it burned its way into my body.
What's the prize?
I started breathing like I had been running for 100 miles. After several attempts, I croaked, "Can just any dog be in this hunt?" Grandpa almost jumped as he answered, "No, sir, not just any hound can be entered. They have to be the best, and they have to be registered, too." He started talking with his hands. Pointing to a chair, he said, "Sit down, and I'll tell you all about it." Grandpa calmed down a little and started talking in a serious voice. "Billy," he said, "it takes some doing to have a set of dogs entered in this hunt. I've been working on this for months. I've written letters on top of letters. I've even had several good friends in town helping me. You see, I've kept a record of all these coons your dogs have caught. And believe me, their catch is up there with the best of them. Now, I've already paid the entry fee and everything is fixed. All we have to do is go." "Entry fee? How much did it cost?" I asked. "You let me worry about that," he said. "Now, what do you say? Want to give it a whirl? I understand the winner receives a gold cup. And you never can tell, we might come home with it. We have as good a chance as anyone else."
He wins.
Sean yelled, "He wins." How do you know?
From the beginning.
What about the beginning?
It said he had a gold cup.
Said he had a gold cup where?
Oh, that's thing, but that's probably not the same
When he was
thing.
in his house.
In his house?
Wait, there was 2 of them for each of the dogs. What's that got the cup? He won.
The small and
Zeke
the
says he
big.
remembers there
Unless-
was 2 cups on the
Unless-
mantle at his
unless one of
house.
them dies and then, you know.
Also, remember back when Grandpa kept writing down numbers at the shop, and and Billy was like, "What are you writing down?" And he was like, "Don't you worry about it." He was keeping track of all of this so that he could be entering him and prove that his dogs were worthy of being in the contest. Kane.
He does.
It's probably gonna be something depressing that comes into the story later on, so I don't know if he's gonna win or not.
Kane says he's not so sure that it's going to be the victory that we're all hoping.
I think
Because we know something's sad.
Yeah, like
Because of you.
Miss Babbis told you that I just flat out straight cried last year.
Yeah, so
And this
then
part-
you basically spoiled
I did not
it.
cry in this chapter, no. Nothing to cry about today.
Wait,
All right.
did you cry last chapter?
But I feel like that's a fair, I like how you remembered that detail from the beginning and you guys pulled out that, yes, at the beginning it
big
did say
cup
he
for
had
old Dan, the
cups
small cup for
on
Lily.
the mantle. Okay?
Maybe what? Wait, Miss Crab, but I was. It said they in the store in the newspaper it said a gold cup for the winner, and in the beginning, so they were like nicely decorated and like they weren't. I don't think they were for winning. I think he just gave them to his dogs because he thinks they did really good. Or maybe she.
Or because they saved the winner's life.
Okay. Maybe.
Or one of them died. And they,
All right. Here we go.
yeah, maybe they just win.
We have as good a chance as anyone else. Grandpa had me so worked up by this time, I didn't think anyone else had good hounds but me. I veered back and blurted, "It's all right with me, Grandpa. Just tell me what to do." Grandpa flew out of gear like a Model T Ford. He slapped the counter with his hand, and in a pent-up voice, he said, "That's the boy. That's the way I like to hear a coon hunter talk." With a questioning look on his face, he asked, "Didn't I see your dogs with you when you came up?" "Yeah, they followed me." I said, "They're outside." "Well, call them in," he said. "I've got something for them." I called to them. Little Ann came in the store walking like she was scared. Old Dan came to the door and stopped. I tried to coax him in. It was no use. My dogs never being allowed in the house, they were scared to come in. Grandpa walked over to a hoop of cheese and cut off 2 chunks about the size of my fist. He walked to the door talking to old Dan. "What's the matter, boy?" He said, "You scared to come in?" "Well, that shows you're a good dog." He handed him a piece of cheese. I heard it rattle in his throat as he gulped it down. Grandpa came back and set little Ann up on the counter. He chuckled as he broke the cheese up in small pieces and fed her. "Yes, sir," he said. "I think we have the best darn coonhounds in these Ozark Mountains, and just as sure as shooting, we're going to win that gold cup." Grandpa didn't have to say that. The way I was feeling, I already had the cup. All I had to do was go and get it. Finished with his feeding of little Ann, Grandpa said, "Now let's see. The hunt starts on the 23rd. That's about, well, let's see. This is the 17th." Counting on his fingers, he finally figured it out. "That's 6 days from now," he said in a jubilant voice. Jubilant. What is jubilant?
Excited?
Excited. Yep. Joyous. Excited. I nodded my head. "We can leave here early on the morning of the 22nd, he said, "and barring accidents, we should make the campground in plenty of time for the grand opening." I asked how we were going. "We'll go in my buggy," he said. "I'll load the tent and everything the night before." I asked him what he wanted me to bring. "Nothing," he said, "but these 2 little hounds, and you will be here early, and I believe I'd let these dogs rest, because we want them in tip-top shape when we get there." I saw the thinking wrinkles bunch up on Grandpa's forehead. "You reckon your daddy would like to go?" he asked. "As late in the fall as it is, I don't think he's too busy, is he?" "No, our crops are all gathered," I said. "We've been clearing some of the bottom land, but that's almost done now." "Well, ask him," he said. "Tell him I'd like to have him go." "I'll ask him," I said, "but you know how Papa is. The farm comes first with him." "I know," Grandpa said, "but you ask him anyway and tell him what I said. Now it's getting late, and you'd better be heading for home." I was almost to the door when Grandpa said, "Wait a minute." He walked over behind the candy counter and shook out one of the quarter sacks. He filled it up to the brim, bounced it on the counter a few times, and dropped in a few more gumdrops. With a twinkle in his eye and a smile on his face, he handed it to me, saying, "Save some for your sisters." I was so choked up I couldn't say anything. I took it and flew out the door, calling to my dogs. On my way home, I didn't walk on the ground. I was way up in the clouds, just skipping along.
He's running. I thought with the dinosaur?
Is he actually up in the clouds?
No,
That's not his head, though. His head's in the clouds. That's
Heads in the clouds? What does that mean?
He's happy.
Happy.
He's getting his hopes up.
that.
Yeah,
that's
very
symbol-
excited. He got his
symbolism.
hopes up.
Symbolism.
Miss
Symbolism.
Brown, I think he's being a little too cocky.
Yeah,
Zeke's worried he might be too cocky. Okay.
What does that mean?
Fiona.
I think that the clouds are kind of like a symbolism.
For
Like if you think of like clouds, like not like clouds like it is outside, but like clouds on like a summer day, it kind of like makes you happy.
okay, she said clouds, being head in the clouds or whatever. She said clouds in general, she's thinking white poofy clouds, makes her think of a nice summer day, makes her think of happiness. So clouds in general, Zeke is thinking storm clouds, which if you look outside, they're coming today, that's for sure.
They were here yesterday.
Yeah, it's supposed to storm later today.
Well, I
tonight.
mean, 2 days ago.
Anywho, Fiona is picturing bright, happy summer clouds, which are making her feel on cloud nine. Hey, all right. With a song, I told the sycamore trees and the pop-eyed gray squirrels how happy I was. Little Ann sensed my happiness. She pranced along on the trail. With a doggish grin on her face, she begged for a piece of candy, which I so gladly gave. Even old Dan felt the pleasant atmosphere. His long red tail fanned the air. Once he raised his head and bawled, "Boop!" I stood still and listened to the droning tones of his deep voice. The sound seemed to be trapped for an instant in the thick timber. It rolled around under the tall white sycamores, beat its way through the wild cane, and found freedom out over the clear blue waters of the river. The sound, following the river's course, rolled like the beat of a jungle drum. As the echo died away in the distance, silence settled over the bottoms. The gray squirrels stopped their chattering. The wild birds quit their singing. I stood still. No sound could be heard. It seemed that all the creatures in the wild were holding their breath. I gazed up toward the towering heights of the tall trees. No leaf was stirring. The silence seemed strained and expectant, like a young boy waiting for a firecracker to explode. I looked at old Dan. He was standing perfectly still, with his right front foot raised and his long ears fanned open. He seemed to be listening and challenging any living creature to make a noise. The silence was broken by the whee of a red-tailed hawk.
It's gonna pick up little Ann and fire away. Yeah.
Zeke just said the hawk is going to pick up little Ann and fire her away.
Almost picked up my dog. Almost picked up my dog and flew
That's
away.
not it. Good guess. Great. I love that you're thinking.
It's gonna attack them.
Okay.
And eat
This
their
seemed
heart.
to be a signal. All around me, the happy atmosphere resumed its natural state. I heard the bam, bam, bam of a woodpecker high in the top of the box elder snag. The cry of a kingfisher and the scream of a blue jay blended perfectly with the drum-like beat. A barking red squirrel, glued to the side of a hackberry tree, kept time to the music with the beat of his tail. Each noise I heard and each sight I saw was very familiar to me, but I never grew tired of listening and watching. They were a God-sent gift, and I enjoyed them all. As I skipped along, it was hard for me to realize all the wonderful things that had happened to me in such a few short years. I had two of the finest little hounds that ever bawled on the trail of a ringtail coon. I had a wonderful mother and father and 3 little sisters. I had the best grandpa boy ever had, and to top it all, I was going on a championship coon hunt. It was no wonder that my heart was bursting with happiness. Wasn't I the luckiest boy in the world?
Yeah, if I was him, I wouldn't say that.
Macy, why wouldn't you say that?
Because he would get jinxed again.
You're gonna jinx himself, okay? Everyone was just sitting. Everyone was just sitting down to supper when I got home. My sisters quit the table for the candy. I told them to divide it equally, and the oldest one asked if I wanted any of it. No, I said, I brought it all for you. Of course, I didn't tell them about the 4 pieces I had in my pocket. They thanked me with their clear blue eyes. I guess it's pretty hard for a young boy to fool his mama. She took one look at me and called me over. She ruffled up my hair, kissed me, and said, if my little boy's eyes get any bigger, they're going to pop right out of his head. Now tell me, what are you so happy about? Before I could say anything, Papa chuckled and asked, what's going on between you and your grandpa? What are you and that old man cooking up now? As fast as I could talk, I started telling about the big coon hunt. I told how hard Grandpa had been working to have my dogs entered and how he'd already paid my entry fee. Catching my breath and looking at Papa, I said, we're going in his buggy and he wants you to go. I waited in silence for his reply. Papa sat there staring off into space, sipping his coffee and saying nothing. I knew he was thinking. In the silence, I was sure I could hear my heart thumping. I said, Papa, please go. We'll have a lot of fun, and besides, the winner receives a big golden cup. He scratched his head and said, Billy, I'd sure like to go, but I don't see how I can with all this work around here. I was beginning to think that Papa wasn't going to go, and then Mama started talking. Work? She said, why, all the work is practically done. I don't know of one thing that you couldn't put off for a few days. Why don't you go? You haven't been anywhere since I don't know when. It's not only the work I'm thinking of, Papa said. It's you and the girls. Why, don't worry about the girls and me, Mama said. We'll be all right. Besides, it'll be several months yet before I need any help. When Mama said this, it dawned on me. I had been so busy with my coon hunting, I hadn't noticed anything unusual. Mama's tummy was all swelled up.
Oh.
She was going to have a baby. I felt guilty for not having noticed. I went over and put my arms around her and kissed her. Papa spoke up. It sure is going to be a big hunt, he said. I heard something about it up at the store one day. Grandpa said there'd be hunters there from everywhere, I said, and some of the best coonhounds in the country. You think you have a chance to win the cup, Papa asked. I started to answer him when the little one piped up. They can't beat old Dan and little Ann, she said. I just bet they can't. Everyone laughed at her serious remark. I would have kissed her, but she had candy, cornbread, and molasses all over her face. I told Papa I didn't know how good those dogs were, but there was one thing I did know. If they beat mine, they would have to hunt harder than they ever hunted before. After I had had my say about the dogs, the silence settled over the dining room. Everyone was looking at Papa and waiting for his answer. I saw a pleased smile spread over his face. He stood up. All right, I'll go, he said. And by golly, we'll bring that gold cup back, too. My sister started clapping her hands and squealing with delight. A satisfied smile spread over my mother's face. At that moment, I'm sure no boy in the world could have been happier than I. Tears of happiness rolled down my cheeks. Mama wiped them away with her apron. In the midst of all the excitement, my little sister, saying not a word, climbed down from her chair. No one said anything. We just watched her. Still clutching a spoon in her small hand, she came around the table and walked up to me. Looking down at the floor, in a bashful voice, she asked, Can I have the gold cup? Putting my finger under her sticky little chin, I tilted her head up. I smiled as I looked into her clear blue eyes. I said, Honey, if I win it, I'll give it to no one but you. I had to cross my heart and hope to die several times before she was satisfied. Back in her chair, she gloated over the others. You just wait and see, she said. It'll be all mine. Nobody's but mine. And I'll put my banty eggs in it. Silly, you don't put banty eggs in a gold cup, the oldest one said. They're just made to look at. That night, I dreamed about gold cups, little red hounds, and coons as big as rain barrels. Once I woke myself up, whooping to my dogs. The next few days were busy ones for me. Knowing what Papa and I would be gone for several days, I did everything I could to make things convenient for Mama. I chopped a large pile of wood and stacked it close to the kitchen door. To make it easier for her to feed our stock, I put some poles from the hillside and boxed up one of the stalls in the barn. I filled it full of hay so she wouldn't have to climb the ladder to the loft. Papa laid down the law to my sisters about being good and helping Mama while we were gone. The day before we were to leave, I was as nervous as a June bug in a hen house. The day seemed endless. A few of the miserable hours were spent talking to my dogs. I told them all about the big hunt and how important it was. Now, if you don't win the gold cup, I said, I won't be mad because I know you will do your best. Old Dan wouldn't even look at me and paid no attention to what I said. He was sulking because I hadn't been taking him hunting. When I talked to little Ann, it was different. She listened and seemed to understand everything I said. I dreaded to go to bed that night. I thought sleep would be impossible. I must have been more tired than I thought I was. I fell asleep almost immediately. Old Red, our rooster, woke me at daybreak, crowing his fool head off. It was a beautiful morning, clear and frosty. After a good breakfast, we kissed Mama goodbye and started for the store. I'm sure there were a lot of coon hunters in the Ozarks, but on that morning, none could have felt as big and important as I. Walking along by the side of my father, I threw out my chest and tried hard to keep pace with his long strides. He noticed and laughed. You'll have to grow a little bit, he said, before you can take steps that long. I didn't say anything. I just smiled. Hearing a noise overhead, I looked up. The gray ones were winging their way southward. I listened to their talking and wondered what they were saying. Wills. Looking to the mountains around us, I saw that the mysterious artist who comes at night had paid us a visit. I wondered how he could paint so many different colors in one night: red, wine, yellow, and rust. What is he talking about right there? A mysterious artist who comes to the mountains and paints many different colors: red, wine, yellow, and rust. Somebody actually painting?
Is it just nature itself doing it?
Is it nature itself? Yeah. Yeah.
Woodpecker. Nature does make causes all of those colors.
Yeah. What time of year is it probably?
Fall.
Fall.
All the leaves.
The leaves are changing. There you go. All right. Who's mysterious artist?
Leaves.
Nature. Science.
Nature.
Science. Yeah, science.
Science.
Nature.
Nature.
Okay.
Science.
Nature is part of science.
All right.
Which one came first?
Science.
My dogs were trotting along in front of us. I smiled at the way their hindquarters shifted to the right. Little Ann would jump and bounce and try to get old Dan to play, but the solemn old boy just jogged along, heedless of everything. You know, Papa said, she doesn't even act like a hound. She is bouncing and playing all the time. Well, she acts more like a little pup than a hound. Yeah, I know, I said. I've noticed that myself. But you know one thing, Papa? She is the smartest dog I've ever seen. Macy, quit playing with that. Why, some of the things she does are almost unbelievable. Yes, I know, said Papa, but it's still strange, very strange. There is only one thing wrong with her, Papa, I said. Yeah, what's that? He goes, you won't believe it, I said, but she's gun shy. Gun shy? How do you know she's gun shy? Papa asked. I didn't know for a long time, I said, until one day when I was hoeing corn down by the field in the old slough. She and old Dan were digging in the bank after a groundhog. Across the river, some fishermen started shooting a gun. It scared little Ann, and she came running to me, shaking all over. Oh, Papa said, maybe you just thought she was scared. No, I didn't, Papa. I said, it happened again up at the store one day. Grandpa shot a chicken hawk. When the gun went off, it scared her half to death. No, she's gun shy, all right. Oh, well, Papa said, that doesn't mean anything. A lot of dogs are afraid of guns. I know, I said, but you wouldn't think she would be that way. I believe if I had a gun on my own, I could break her of being gun shy. Papa looked at me and said, from what your mother says, you're not getting a gun yet for some time. Yes, I know, I said. When we reached the store, we saw the team was already hitched to the buggy and was standing in front of the store. Grandpa had loaded the tent and several boxes of groceries. I had never seen him in such high spirits. He slapped Papa on the back, saying, I'm sure glad you could go with us. It'll do you good to get out once in a while. Papa laughed and said, it looked like I had to go or have everyone in the family mad at me. Yeah, Megs?
When he was talking about little Ann being gun shy, my dog Dumbo, he's scared guys, and my mom and dad kind of thought it was strange because he's a red bone coonhound,
Mm-hmm.
and he's scared of guns, and yeah, that's kind of what it.
All right. Maggie said their red-bone coonhound that they have is actually scared of guns, too.
I got a connection.
Sean connection.
Okay, so I have a miniature.
Miniature pincher?
And when we were shooting these like little fireworks, it was like those ones that go.
Right, fireworks.
Yeah, and it scared her half to death. Oh,
Yeah, I don't know any dogs that like fireworks.
Oh no,
A lot of dogs, pets in general, have problems with 4th of July and fireworks. Fiona.
So what I think is gonna happen is that since little Ann is afraid of guns, that they're gonna be out hunting for the coons, and they're gonna get on the same coon as another hunter, and the hunter's gonna try and shoot the coon, and instead it's gonna hit one of the dogs.
You read ahead.
No?
Fiona has made a prediction.
It's gonna be
She said she's worried that they keep talking about little Ann being gun shy. They're going to this big coon hunt, and them and another hunter are going to be after the same
I
coon.
don't think that will happen. Maybe
And little Ann's accidentally going to get shot when they're
they're gonna
shooting at a
get
coon.
close to a coon hunter with a gun, and then they're gonna shoot the coon, and then little Ann's gonna run away and be scared.
Gray said she's just going to get scared and run away.
And
Josie.
they won't be able to find her.
I was thinking that maybe whenever they start the race, I know sometimes they like shoot off the gun up into the air. Maybe they'll do that and then it'll scare her and then she like won't be able to race as good and like maybe it won't like just she might be too scared to even do it.
Okay.
She might run back to
Zeke.
the buggy and stay there.
So our farm dog, his name was Hunter. So he died like from cancer a couple years ago, but he was scared of guns, and we always tried to take him squirrel and rabbit hunting. And if you shot the gun, he would always run behind you. And put his tail between his legs, so he wouldn't hunt. But now we have a new farm dog, and we named him Hunter too. And so, yeah, and he found it.
All right, Zeke had a dog that was gun shy and would follow behind them if they had the gun hunting with his tail between his legs. Kendall.
My dog is making a connection too. He's scared of guns and also farmers. We had to get a baby Tylenol to make him stop getting scared.
Oh my goodness. All right, guys, we're going to keep moving so we can finish this chapter. All right.
How much longer?
Looking in the buggy, I saw my axe. I didn't think I ever wanted to see it again, but for some reason it didn't look like I thought it would. There was no blood on it, and it looked harmless enough laying there all clean and bright. Grandpa saw me looking at it. He came over. I kept it a few days, he said, just in case the marshal wanted to ask some questions. Everything seems to be all right now, and we may need a good axe on this hunt. Grandpa sensed how I felt about the axe. He waited in silence for my answer. The excitement of the hunt was so strong in me, even the sight of the axe brought back only a fleeting remembrance of Reuben's accident. I said, yes, we will need one. Besides, it's a good one, and there's no use in throwing it away. Grandpa laughed, reached over, and screwed my cap around on my head, saying, that's the boy. That's what I wanted you to say. Now you better go to the barn and get some hay and make a bed in the buggy box for your dogs. Ah, Grandpa, I said, they can walk. They don't ever get tired. Besides, they're used to walking. Walk? Grandpa almost shouted. They're not going to walk. No, sir, not if I can help it. You want them to be footsore when we get there? Papa chuckled and said, we can't win a gold cup with 2 sore-footed hounds, can we? Of course not, Grandpa said. Now you go and get that hay like I said. As I turned to go to the barn, I couldn't help but smile. It made me feel good to have my Papa and Grandpa so concerned about my dogs. Sean. Oh, okay. I had taken only a few steps when Grandpa said, oh, wait a minute. I stopped and turned around. Walking up to me and glancing toward the house as he did, he whispered, in that empty kraut barrel in the harness room, there's a jug of corn liquor. Cover it up in the hay so your grandma won't see it and bring it back with you. With a twinkle in his eye, he said, you never can tell when we'll need some medicine. Is it medicine?
Steroids.
No, it's alcohol. I knew my father wouldn't drink any of the liquor, but if Grandpa wanted to take along a whole barrel, it was all right with me. Just when I thought we were ready to leave, Grandma came bustling out. Grandpa got nervous. He whispered and asked, did you hide the jug good? I nodded my head. Grandma handed Grandpa a pair of long-handle underwear and a scarf, saying, I knew you'd forget something. Hello. Hi. I did. I put them in. I did those very first. They're not in there? Well, I don't know what happened because I know I did them.
Infant camping. Wait, did I raise my hand for axe talk?
Third quarter. Personal development. All right. Well, I put them in. I don't know. Is everything else okay on mine?
It's fourth quarter, not third.
Honey, I know. I'm looking for something for the report card, but thank you.
Wait, we're
Okay. I'll fix it real quick.
Yeah, we're supposed to get it yesterday.
Okay. Sorry, that was Miss Watson. I had to answer a question. Okay. Sore-footed hounds, run to the barn. Did you hide the jug good? I nodded my head. Grandma handed Grandpa a pair of long-handle underwear and a scarf, saying, I knew you'd forget something. Grandpa snorted, but knew there was no use arguing with her. She started picking around in the groceries, asking about salt, pepper, and matches. Nanny, we've got everything, he said. You must think I'm a baby and don't know how to pack a grub box. A baby, Grandma snorted. Why, you're worse than a baby. At least they have a little sense. You don't have any at all. Any old codger like you out chasing a coon all over the hills? At her biting remark, I thought Grandpa was going to blow up. He snorted like Daisy, our milk cow, when she had seen a booger. I crawled up in the buggy box with my dogs and hung my feet out. Grandma came over and asked me about warm clothes. I told her I had plenty. She kissed me goodbye, and we were on our way.
I'd be glad to be
All
leaving
right.
since she's acting like that.
On our way to a championship hunt.
We are. Yeah.
All right.
Do I
bad?
do any
20, I think.
publicist or George Fredway?
Just hold on to it.
bad.
All right, guys, we already did the first activity on here. Go ahead and do the questions, the vocabulary.
Wait, didn't we do the vocabulary?
If you have time, do the enrichment, but don't worry yourself too much on that. Okay? All right, but definitely the questions and the vocabulary. Josie, yes, ma'am.
I was just out of the room really quick, so